Welcome to our July Under the Hood event. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein, the founder and CEO of Under the Sisterhood, a resource, a space for women to be seen, heard, and celebrated. And we've been talking a lot about it being a story sharing platform. And one of the ways we share stories, Jennifer from Ghana. So one of the ways we share stories is through our events. We come in and we have experts and leaders come in and talk about their various journeys to really support and help educate and inform and bring women together, and of course, network. I'm really excited about today's event, which is our Under the Hood. It's negotiating life and health. And one of the impetuses for this idea was conversations I was having with our panelists, which Amy will introduce in a minute, really about the power of negotiation. Lucia being an expert at that and having written a book, and Keisha and LaToya negotiating health as leaders in really incredible and inspiring ways. So I am going to hand it over to Amy. I have one more thing I wanted to add, which is in May, we launched our Under the Hood of Women's Health platform, and we during Women's Health Month. And in doing so, in launching that, we really wanted to create this story sharing platform for women from puberty through postmenopause to really address every life stage, to educate and give women access to stories from both girls going through puberty and adolescence, women, and then the experts from pediatric and adolescent gynecologists to NAM certified menopause experts. The reason why I bring that up is, as you will see in our ongoing themes every month, health is going to be a through line, because without our health, you know, what's it all about, Alfie? So I'd like to introduce Amy Danielson-Paul, our head of programming, and she will be the host for tonight's event.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another monthly event. We love coming together for these events, and this is a time that we can build our community through invigorating conversations. In case this is the first time you're joining us, I think everybody here has been here, but we feature a different panel of women every month, and we delve into different topics, sometimes that are more taboo, sometimes that we just want to get under the hood with. So I am really excited tonight to introduce another outstanding panel. Each time I'm just even more and more inspired. Every month I leave these sessions so inspired and just so lit up with the incredible women that we have in this community and that are present with us. So at this time now, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Keisha Hickson. Keisha Hickson is a professional speaker, thought leader, and a passionate advocate for resilience, transformation, and women's empowerment. Her personal journey has been marked by a diagnosis of multiple myeloma and a challenging prognosis, which has fueled her pursuit of a limitless legacy. She firmly believes in living life on your own terms, creating a narrative that leaves a lasting and meaningful impact beyond conventional boundaries. With 25 years of experience in the financial industry, she's held roles up to vice president and senior branch manager in wealth management. Her expertise, supported by Series 6 and 63 licenses, as well as life and health insurance qualifications, has been instrumental in her transition from corporate success to empowering others. Despite facing a rare, incurable cancer with a prognosis of 3 to 5 years, she chose to view this life-altering moment as an opportunity for profound personal change. Keisha offers a unique perspective on confronting complacency and adversity, redefining one's narrative, and fully embracing life. Keisha, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, Amy, thank you for having me. It's pleasure's all mine.
So I am just excited to get right into one of the first things that I love about your bio, is that I just love your belief, and I'm going to quote you once again here, of living life on your terms to leave a lasting and meaningful impact that goes beyond conventional boundaries. So share a little bit about your story and how you have changed the narrative of your life.
Sure. Up until 2016, when I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, I lived a full life. I had a beautiful career. I have a family. I got married. I did all the things that we aspire to do as we go through this journey of life. And I suffered a fall in January of 2016. I thought I had like a minor injury, but what came out of the MRI was that I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a rare incurable cancer of the plasma cells, with a life expectancy of 3 to 5 years at that time. So at that moment, my daughter was 8 years old, and I was like, well, this can't be it. Like, I possibly could be dead before my 44th birthday. So with that time, like, I feel like I was under pressure to do all the things that I wanted to. I've been putting off for years. Like, oh, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll retire. When my daughter finishes high school, I'll get to it. I found myself saying, one, I have to fight as much as I can because my daughter was 8 years old. And two, what is the legacy I'm really going to leave? How would I really be remembered? Right? Because my life evolved so much around working and raising a family, right? So at that moment, I decided that one, whatever I wanted to do, I was going to do. Would start a business, travel, whatever I felt like I wanted to do. There was no more negotiation of I have time because now I don't have time. So I just started. I opened my first business the next year in 2017, and I really wanted to show other women, especially cancer patients, that there's life during cancer and during and after cancer. You know, the C word is very scary. No one wants to hear it. I didn't think in a million years I'd be a part of that club. No one in my family has cancer except me. And I just wanted to prove that things happen in your life and you can still move along and still be productive and not just like revert and crawl up and just wait to die. I couldn't do it. So, and that's what kind of started me on this whole journey of how would you be remembered? Like, how are you going to impact someone else? And I started to share my story. And also, I became a multiple myeloma coach because disease is very scary. When you read about it, what can possibly happen? And I just wanted to show an example of, yes, I go to treatment every week and this is happening, but you still can live your life to a degree. Like, find a way to make it your new normal and still do the things that you want to do. Because if I had just waited for the 3 to 5 years to expire, I would have done nothing. And I've lived with it for almost 9 years. And if I don't tell you, you don't know. Mm-hmm. Right? Elizabeth met me in person. You see me on camera. You don't know that every Monday I go to treatment. Right now, my vitamin B12 is low. I have to go get an injection every week. But these are the effects of ongoing treatment. But I just choose to look on the brighter side. And that's something I want to inspire others not to become complacent. Because when I look at all the things that I could have done the 26 years between my career that I kind of kept putting off to inspire people to really just trying to live the life that you want to live. It doesn't have to be being an entrepreneur. It could be learning a second language, learning how to dance, salsa, little things that would help you shape of who you want to be and how you want to be seen. So that's my story. Sometimes I go off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You touched on some powerful things there, and thank you for sharing that. And you know, the complacency component of life can really tug at us and it's detrimental. It can be so destructive in our lives, in our everyday lives. And that's a way of negotiation that can creep in where we start to negotiate with ourselves that allows us to be more complacent, that gives us those excuses to sit back and kind of assume that we have the next day or the next moment to live our lives. So it's a great reminder to step up for ourselves and negotiate in empowering ways for ourselves rather than allowing that negotiation to take us into complacency and
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. I'm going to come back around to you in just a moment. I want to hear some more. And now I will introduce our second panelist, Lucia Kanter St. Amour. Lucia is a distinguished VP Emerita for UN Women, a respected University of California law professor, an attorney with over 25 years of experience, an international negotiation expert, and a best-selling author. She is one of the few female authorities in her field, celebrated for her exceptional contributions and expertise. Her book, For the Forces of Good, The Superpower of Everyday Negotiation, shot to #1 bestseller within 10 days of its release in September 2022. As a special needs parent, executive director of a grassroots nonprofit organization, law professor, and recovering CEO, she has traveled abroad and in deep territories on behalf of people who have been left out of discourse, decision, and design. She is dedicated to a new revolution of generating more women to harness the superpower of everyday negotiation so that they can show up confidently in all aspects of their lives. From getting their toddler to eat their peas, to landing a dream job, to being the most powerful person in the room. Hi, Lucia. Thank you so much for joining us as a panelist this week. It's great to have you on this side. And I would love to start with, negotiating is something that not all people are comfortable with, I would say. I would say also a lot of women struggle with how to harness the power that you speak about and how do they voice for the betterment of themselves and their families. So share also here a little bit about your journey and how you learned to harness your voice and the skills for negotiating everything from pay rates to working with your children.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me. First of all, I'm a big believer in saying thank you. That's, negotiators have good manners. It's not a petulant demand. It's not it's my turn. I deserve this. The world does not care what you think you deserve. So say thank you. It's good manners in a negotiation. And I'm going to address your question. There's a lot more to unpack in that question than you might realize. And I can't help but make an observation about Keisha when you spoke. And first of all, you were asked to speak about your journey. And then when you spoke about it for only about 3 minutes, you then immediately apologized for going on a tangent. And this happens a lot. I see it happen, especially with a lot of women, where we apologize for taking up time and space. And I, for one, have never, not a word that I use often, never. I have never seen a man in a meeting apologize for taking up time and space. So wanted to point that out with all the love in my heart. And now to your question, Amy. So women have historically negotiated overall 4 times less often than men in any context. When it comes to salary negotiation, and I'll tell you later why I'm putting salary in quotes, because that's always how it's referred to. And I'm like, hold up, we need to change your terminology. Women have historically negotiated 8 times less often than men. And it is hurting us in very real ways to the tune of about $1 million over the course of your career that you are forfeiting just by avoiding the discomfort of negotiating your very first job. Okay, we have real hard data on that. So yes, women have been historically left out, felt cringy about it, been socialized to feel that way about it, or they're being rude or gauche or greedy or not reading the room. And fun fact, when women do negotiate, say, their salary, they get more pushback for it than men do. So it's like we're not really rewarded or don't get a lot of positive reinforcement when we do it. So you're darn right that I am on a mission now to evolve that. And so you talked about pay rates to children and, this trend of women. There's a study done out of the University of Munster recently where they took a look at 150 prior studies to see if they could find some trends, some patterns as to women versus non-women men and in the negotiating context, and seeing if there are some places where women actually really shine. And turns out there are 4 ways that women outperform men in negotiation. I'm going to tell you what they are. So one is when negotiating on behalf of others. So this gets to that part of your question where you're like, for themselves or others. Well, when women negotiate on behalf of others, they tend to outperform men. They also tend to outperform men when we have had some sort of training, right? And by the way, that doesn't mean a $3,000 expensive weekend workshop, or master class. They're all called master classes now. You don't have to spend that much money on it. Number 3 is when women plan for a negotiation. They tend to outperform men. And the 4th one is fascinating to me. And this was just out of Stanford University last year. It's while walking. While walking, women tend to outperform men. And that's really interesting. And it turns out it has something to do with oxytocin production, which is from the brain. That's the bonding hormone. And it's the thing that tends to both bind us and blind us. In that, it can tend to create this like in-group versus out-group dynamic. And when women are walking, the oxytocin's pumping. It tends to bind people together or make them feel that way, which makes them better to negotiate. Whereas oxytocin production in men operates a little differently. So we don't have the same outcomes in terms of pro-social behavior from men with oxytocin production versus women. Because in men, it creates more of a sense of competition, competitiveness, and protect your own. So I just love that little new information out of Stanford. Now let's talk about, you say, pay rates to children. Because negotiation is not just for business, everybody's business. You're going to find negotiation books in the business section. Even in the bisect categories, when you got to choose a category for your negotiation book, it's under business. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. The whole point of what I'm doing with my books is to say, like, no, it's not just for business, it's everybody's business. And once you come up against the higher stakes negotiations in your life, such as, quote unquote, salary negotiation, which is on an individual level, that's a kind of a high stakes negotiation. If you have not been honing that skill in an everyday context where you can afford to get it wrong and then get better and then get it wrong and then get better, then no wonder you are not prepared for that higher stakes negotiation, which will always come along. So the number one panicked question that I get from people seeking help is, how do I negotiate my salary? And I'm like, okay, first of all, it's not salary, it's total compensation package, because salary is just one part of it. And sometimes salary is truly not negotiable. You need to go in recognizing this whole field of options that you can negotiate, all which translate to money. And the second thing is, well, yeah, of course you feel helpless if you haven't been practicing. And I mean like 6 to 8 minutes a day, choosing some everyday situation and recognizing it as a negotiation. And the classic example I like to give is getting your toddler to eat their peas. This is a great scenario that demonstrates power versus leverage. And people tend to use those words synonymously. Power and leverage are not the same thing. You, as the adult, are the more powerful party. You are bigger, you have more experience, you are stronger, you have better command of your motor skills. Your toddler doesn't have all that, and yet they are the only one who can eat the peas. Therefore, they have the leverage. Now, the thing about leverage is, even if you're more powerful party, someone with the leverage can kind of hold you at an impasse, but leverage can shift. It's dynamic. So you, as the more powerful party, how do you get that leverage to shift? And there are various ways that you can do that. Many different ways that you can do that without getting into a power struggle with your toddler. Okay, that's one thing you don't do. All right, not saying I haven't done it. So if you can start to kind of recognize these everyday situations and analyze them, think about them in terms of negotiation strategy, you're going to end up being super stealth when those larger negotiations come along. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I love it. And I love the examples that you gave of how women do and can perform better. I think that's great inspiration for us to also take with us today. So good. We're going to get into some more in just a minute. All right. LaToya is back with us now. LaToya made it. LaToya Dwight is our next finalist. She is a BBA, MSM, RHU, CHCC, REBC. humanitarian, women's health advocate, driven and highly successful employee benefits consultant hailing from Atlanta, Georgia, by way of New York. She created and founded the fibroid pandemic as an answer to the frustrations she experienced during her tumultuous journey with uterine fibroids. Its mission is to provide resources to humans with a uterus who are seeking a holistic approach to overcome the debilitating disease of uterine fibroids through education, support, community initiatives, and tools to best advocate for themselves. LaToya, welcome. Thank you for coming in and joining us.
Thank you for having me, Amy. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with you all.
Absolutely. And so I'm just going to jump in with you that, we've been talking about living well every day, and there are so many individuals that have various types of conditions that they may or may not know about. Keisha shared a little bit about her story in that case. And also many women not even knowing that about these conditions, what they are, and can oftentimes be misdiagnosed while testing for the actual issue. So share a little bit about your story and how you found out about living with fibroids.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, again, I appreciate the opportunity to have me here on this panel. I know there are several other people who can be speaking with you all, and I just appreciate the invite. So my story started well over 10 years ago, and my then OBGYN, who I no longer go to, I was going to her for 12 and a half years. My boyfriend and we did not want to have an unplanned pregnancy. So we both agreed that we will have the Mirena IUD implanted into my uterus, into my cervix, because I knew that taking a pill every day was not going to work for my lifestyle. I traveled a lot for work and it just wasn't going to work. So 5 years later, I went to go get it replaced, and my OBGYN, who I had been going to again for 12 and a half years, and there's a reason why I keep saying 12 and a half years, she couldn't locate it. So she asked if I had taken it out. And I told her, I said, well, no. And I didn't know that was a thing, that you can take it out. I didn't realize that. And so she had me go into ultrasound. Now, I want to paint the picture that this is within her office visit, her office suite. She didn't see me to go get an ultrasound across town or at a hospital outpatient facility. This is literally in her doctor's office, just down the hallway, a couple doors. So I went and got the ultrasound. The ultrasound tech performed a topical ultrasound. She couldn't find the IUD. So she did a vaginal ultrasound. She was able to locate it. And she says to me, okay, we see the IUD. Looks like it did shift a little bit. Go ahead and get dressed. And so as I'm getting dressed, Amy, she says to me, hey, by the way, how are your fibroids coming along? And I look at her and I go, what's that? And you can tell that she was mortified. So she was a little bit hesitant and kind of awkward. She's like, well, I'll have you talk to the doctor. I'm like, okay, that was weird. So I get dressed and get back in there with the doctor. And the doctor is just very casual. She's like, pulling up her calendar to reschedule, because by that time, too much time had passed within that doctor visit in order for her to continue trying to extract the IUD. So as she's trying to recommend different date options to me, I said, time out. Can we talk about those fibroid things that your ultrasound tech mentioned to me? So she opens up the file and she's like, oh, wow. Yeah, you have some rather large fibroids. And her first question to me was, do you plan to have any more children? And at that time, I literally just got engaged. My husband doesn't have any children. I have an adult child. So I was very confused by the question. I said, well, we're not planning, but I mean, we just got engaged. I mean, if we decide to have children, that's fine. If not, that's also fine. But where are you going with this question? And she says, well, based on your age and because of the size of your fibroids, I would recommend a hysterectomy if you're not planning to have any more children. And I go, wait a minute, hold on, time out. So, during your introduction, when you read my bio, you read that I am an employee benefits consultant. So by profession, I negotiate B2B contracts with major medical carriers on behalf of employers. And I said that to say that I know that a hysterectomy is a major surgery. While other people may not know that it's a major surgery, I also knew that it would eliminate the opportunity for me to ever give birth to children naturally. So I was very confused. And, I was very adamant about not wanting to get a hysterectomy. I kept trying to probe her for questions. Well, what are they? How did I get them? Do you remove the IUD and they just go away? Are they sexually transmitted? Is it within my DNA? Do I take a pill and they go away? Like, can you give me a little bit more information? And she says to me, well, they're just like kudzu. You can cut them away, but they're just going to grow back. That's the reason why I recommend a hysterectomy. Never once did she say to me that they are non-cancerous tumors of the uterus. Never once did she say to me that statistically 70% of humans with the uterus, also known as women, will develop fibroids within their childbearing years before age 50. Never once did she say there are alternative opportunities, options to mitigate the symptoms, the risk, the growth, etc. So I went on this 4-year long journey doing my own research. Type A personality, I just had to figure it out myself. But when I left that doctor's office, I left confused. I felt like I was being gaslit. I felt abandoned because remember, I was going to her for 12 and a half years. And I'm thinking like, does she even know who I am? The next day, their office called me to schedule the hysterectomy. And when I tell you the fervor, like the passion, the anger, the confusion, the frustration, the fear that I felt like a mixture of emotions. So I was very adamant about not wanting it. And I specifically asked her, this scheduling person, to have the doctor call me. And she did. And I was told her how taken aback I was and how offended I was and how unseen and unheard I felt. And I ripped her a new one without using any form of curse words, without raising my voice, without going nuts and using foul language. And at the end of that conversation, she says to me, you know what, LaToya, it sounds like you need someone who's going to listen to you. And at that very moment, I was confused as to who I was seeing for 12 and a half years. So that was the beginning of my fibroid healing journey.
Wow. Wow. And I mean, I just have to ask, did you find somebody who would listen to you?
I did, gratefully. After my 4-year long journey, I had a procedure, non-invasive procedure called uterine fibroid embolization performed by a interventional radiologist here in Atlanta, Georgia. And it went off without a hitch. Dr. Lippman, their office, treated me wonderfully. That was in 2019. I posted on Facebook. It went nuts. I got calls and text messages and everything. 2022, things changed for me. I started to have unrelated symptoms, passing out, palpitations, and come to find out after about 30 different doctor visits, my cardiologist was able to identify that although I had remarkable results, the fibroids did shrink down. They were sitting in my groin area, blocking the iliac vein, which is a major artery that recycles the blood from your lower extremities to your heart. So after 3 cardiologists, a gastroenterologist, a neurologist, mental health, no one can figure out what was going on until that one cardiologist found out. So I did have to undergo an actual surgery November of 2023, and I'm literally thriving with no fibroids.
Oh, congratulations.
You.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you for sharing your story. We're going to come back to a little bit more about your journey in just a minute.
My pleasure.
I'm going to swing this back over to Keisha. So I find this next topic here that I'd like to get into with you, a little bit deeper is what is again, you quote, your unique perspective on confronting complacency and adversity, and how has this helped you live a fuller and healthier life? You've shared a little bit about that, but I'd like to go a little deeper with your unique perspective on this. And
Okay, so I don't know if it's that unique. I just found who I want to show up as, right? And I think all of us have to find how we want to show up in the world, right? When things happen, part of it is just acknowledging where you are and accepting it and putting a plan in place. I realized throughout this past few years, 2 years of me being a public speaker and being on more and more podcasts, I realized like my background from banking, how I manage my team, they're very result driven KPIs. I manage my life the same way. I had an aha moment the other day on a podcast with a gentleman from California. It was all about for me just accepting where I was and what was happening and deciding how I choose to live my life. And I encourage others to do the same, right? and put your plan in place and one foot in front of the other. That's it. And I'm still overcoming my fears. This summer, I decided to go back to learn how to swim again. I had an accident when I was about 15 in the ocean and I stopped swimming. My daughter comes to my camp, so we're now taking swimming lessons together, and I've been avoiding that forever, right? So it's all about facing your fears and weighing the risk versus the reward. If you don't try, you're never going to know. It's always going to be in the back of your mind of, I wish I tried it. Right? I wish I did this. But something also, we talk about complacency. We become complacent in different parts of our lives. For me, I think most women we think about complacency as far as our careers are concerned. But complacency shows up in many different ways in our social lives with our children, in our churches, right? It's also identify like your life that really feeds you and how you can do better and make those situations better and not put that off as well. Because it's always regret when you don't follow through what you want to do. Right? I don't know if it's that unique. I love it. I love the person who I've become after my diagnosis. I was awesome then, but I'm awesome now. Like I just multiple myeloma in my DNA. You know, people often ask me, how do I live with it? One, I don't have a choice because I can't give it back. So what is there else for me to do besides embrace it? And yes, I live with it every day. I think about it probably more than once a day because it's always the ability for me to come out of remission, right? And also like me being so fixated on my numbers, my KPIs, my multiple myeloma targets, I neglect other parts of my health, right? Like all of a sudden I'm extremely tired for the past 2 months and I go to my regular physician and my vitamin B12 is in the 90s. That's why I'm so tired. So you pay attention so much to one thing, you tend to ignore something else. I'm so fixated on these myeloma numbers that I didn't bother to think that maybe I'm tired because I'm lacking somewhere else, right? So I share that story to say you need to look at everything holistically and not ignore when you don't feel well or something doesn't seem right. You know, I'm almost 50 now. I was talking to one of my nurses, and we need to really stop saying, oh, I'm just older. So this comes with it. Because that's not always the case, right? If something significantly could be wrong, just take the time to ask the question. So when you know, as much as I do, there's other areas in my life I can do better that I'm continuously working on. And I think we are work in progress. We're not perfect.
Yeah, it keeps going, right? Every year that we're here. And I love that also to not just give it over to just being older, because that also can just ignite that complacency that much more. It gives us an excuse to not have to step up for ourselves or choose, you know, something that is
Just accept something because I'm older. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people are older and live fabulous, healthy, vibrant, thriving lives, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you again. We'll continue the conversation as we go along. And Lucia, let's come back to you now. So you have a fascinating career that has spanned so many different personal and professional experiences. I love reading about all the things that you've delved into, all the aspects of your career. And what has been one of your defining moments and lessons that has made an impact on how you are able to help more women strengthen their negotiating skills? So going a little bit more into like, we have those moments sometimes that just make that big difference for us. I'd love to hear a little bit about yours.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question. I first want to say something to LaToya. I'm struck by how you characterized it as ripping her a new one when you asserted yourself with your doctor. You said you did not raise your voice, you did not use expletives, and yet you said it was ripping her a new one. And that's because it's conduct on your behalf that's just so unheard of or has been so unheard of by women. I recently got someone sent me an email, a man, and he made some comments where I wrote back to him and I said, you are overstepping your role in this project. This is not your role. This is somebody else's role. Please don't continue to do that. And he wrote back, ouch, kind of harsh, don't you think? And I wrote back, not harsh, direct. And please, in the future, when women assert themselves, do not tell them that they are being hurtful. And never heard from him again. And that's fine. What he should have said, what I said, by the way, you're overstepping your role. He should have replied with, thank you for letting me know, right? Okay. I didn't rip him a new one. I was direct and assertive, and I told him I didn't let him do that to me. I didn't let him get away with it. Back to a defining moment. So I was a fledgling attorney. I was 27 years old. I was such a baby. And I went to this meeting with the Longshoremen's Union down at Fisherman's Wharf with the partner from the law firm. And I was the only woman. I walked into that room with all these thick guys with no necks. And one of them said out loud and laughed, well, who invited the president, maybe he had said secretary of the Lollipop Guild, referring to me. And they all laughed. Wow. And then he pointed to a chair in the corner and said, you sit there. So I was embarrassed. I was literally excluded from the table. The partner didn't say anything. And so I went and sat in the chair, which was, okay, you can't tell, I'm 5'2" and like 110 pounds after Thanksgiving dinner. So one of the reasons I would always wear heels is so that my feet would touch the ground in these huge chairs. Conference room chairs are always too big for me. And, but I couldn't wear heels that day because I was like at the Longshoreman and we were going to be walking. So I was wearing flats, wearing loafers, and I sit in this chair that swallows me. And I look and I feel ridiculous. My feet aren't even touching the floor. I look like a child. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to these guys. And on the way back to the office with the partner on the way back, I said to him, well, first I said all the preparatory things that women say to discount the thing they're about to say. I said, you've probably already thought of this and I don't really know what I'm doing. And this may not be helpful, but okay, anyone? Don't act like you haven't done it. I said, did you notice when that one guy said this? And that actually is totally contradictory to like this one document, because I was prepared, like I had done my homework. I was really familiar with all the documents. I said, it doesn't add up to me. And the partner pulls over the car and he turns off the ignition. And I'm like, oh, I'm so fired just based on sheer stupidity, right? He says, no one noticed that. I was the only person to notice this disconnect in the evidence. And me noticing it completely pivoted the leverage. And remember I was saying leverage shifts? It completely shifted the leverage in the negotiation. Now, how come I was able to observe that? Well, I had just been excluded. I had just been, put in the corner, don't put baby in the corner, right? Baby was put in the corner and I was in a perfect position. Part of negotiation is agility, right? It's like you got to MacGyver it. You use what is at your disposal. Negotiation skills, they are portable and analog, and they don't even have to involve technology. You have them in you. So what I had available to me when I was excluded was listening and observing. And because all those guys were so busy talking, they were not able to notice things and assimilate information, but I was. And so what that taught me, and this is something that I've incorporated into all of my sort of working with mostly women on negotiation, because I get asked a lot, what's the number one negotiation skill? And when you ask other authorities and experts on negotiation, that question, they say planning. And I say, well, planning is number two. The number one most stealth negotiation skill is listening. I mean, listening to people like they've never been listened to before. And then I'll generally say that to people and they say, oh, I'm a very good listener. And I'm like, probably not as good as you think. So I still remember that story. I try not to say I'll never forget that story because I don't know what I'll forget and what I'll remember. What I can say is I still remember that moment in my life and what it taught me. So women often talk about, like, oh, it's our turn. It's, speak your truth, speak up, speak out, speak. okay, there's a time for speaking and there's a time for listening. So let's not overhype the speaking part, because when people think they've excluded you, they may have just made you the most powerful person in the room, which is what I was that day.
Mhm.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. I love that share and I love that inspiration. And those are the moments that define so much in us and in our future and the next steps that we take. And that's why I find it so fascinating to hear your story. Thank you for that. And LaToya, I'll come back around over to you now. So, today we're discussing the power of negotiation, and this can go in either direction. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, negotiating our lives for improvement. And sometimes people will negotiate themselves out of something, out of fear, which can certainly be the case with health, with our own health. So what would you like to share about the importance of living well and how we can negotiate in the best ways for our health? And I've already just heard, in your story here that you've just shared with us, how much you were negotiating for you and your health. And that's really powerful, just hearing how you were able to be assertive and be direct, as Lucia has reframed for us to be able to look at that and verbalize that situation for you, because it was a powerful moment and you negotiated for your health rather than against your health. So what could you share with us as some inspiration in terms of helping more people here and anybody who might be listening to this find their voice in those moments?
Absolutely. So for me, first and foremost, Lucia, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. As relates to your health and negotiations, I think it's very important to understand that there are no negotiations when it comes to your health. Not only is it critical to become your greatest cheerleader, but it's critical to not let any moment cease you. And what I mean by that is, had I negotiated my health, and in full transparency, guys, I probably would not be here today speaking to you. And the reason why I say that is because although fibroids are non-cancerous tumors of the uterus, oftentimes people and doctors will say that they're non-life threatening. That is the furthest thing from the truth. If you have fibroids and they are blocking your iliac vein, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a major artery that recycles blood from your lower extremities to your heart is not getting blood. So you will have stroke-like, heart attack-like symptoms that can be easily misdiagnosed as something else. Sidebar, first time my husband called the ambulance, called 911, and they came to the house and transported me to the hospital. They gave me a bottle of Xanax and said there was nothing wrong with me. Had I stopped, that was in March of 22. Had I stopped there, I probably would not be here. So understanding with your health, there is no negotiating at all. You are your greatest cheerleader. There are no excuses. There are no apologies. My self-care is not selfish. And if you think it is, I'm okay with that, because oftentimes we tend to put ourselves first. And Keisha kind of alluded to this a little bit. We work like crazy, 80 hours a week. We give our time and our effort and our energy and our space and our mental capacity to our jobs, our friends, our family, our children, and we literally leave nothing in the tank for ourselves. That is no longer how I live my life. I live a soft life and I embrace living a soft life, and I love it over here. I am not a strong woman. I am a woman with feelings. I am a woman with emotions. I am a woman who likes to take breaks. And I am a woman who has embraced the word no without explanation. No, because, oh, no, just no. No, thank you. I don't want to go. I would rather not. I'd rather sit on my couch and relax and allow my body the time it needs to rest and heal. So, number one, there are no negotiations when it comes to your health. Number two, from a business perspective, it is also very critical to understand your health insurance benefits. Similar to Keisha, I am a agent, a broker. I have my accident and sickness license, but I also hold all those different designations. It's not for the faint of heart. Typically, people will spend, statistically, I think we said 7 minutes electing their medical benefit coverages. And that's usually when your employer's having open enrollment. but they spend weeks on end, you know, doing different types of, researching what type of car they want to buy, what type of house, what type of shoes, what type of materialistic items. And this is your health that we're talking about. So I always encourage people, if you have an employer who offers you benefits, go to that open enrollment meeting, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, go to that meeting. But not only that, read the materials in advance so you can arrive at that meeting question ready, so you can be best prepared before you make your benefit elections. Because what happens is, for people who are going through their fibroid healing journey, oftentimes, and you'll read this in your statistics again, they wait between 3 to 5 years before taking action, simply because they don't understand their insurance. They're afraid it's going to be very expensive. If you do your research, if you pay attention, and you are able to educate yourself on what benefit offerings you have, that can really help you from a financial perspective. Because we all know, when you are unhealthy, that creates presenteeism at the office as well as absenteeism. So again, when it comes to health and wealth, there are no negotiations.
Well said. Well said. Full stop right there. I'm going to jump into the chat really quick. And while I do, if anyone has any questions for our panelists or would like to contribute something to the conversation or share a story, and if there's anything else here the panelists would like to also share now that we can, yeah.
I've got something to piggyback onto LaToya, and I would say, when it comes to negotiating your health, or not negotiating against your own health, because it's the number one priority, that it's advisable to have someone else with you if you can, for some advocacy, because you cannot process the information. If you're all alone and you're being told, it's like you can't. So you need, if you can, have someone else with you. And this story just happened, this just developed in the past week, where my very best friend, like I'm not me without her friend, was in Italy on vacation, ended up in a hospital in Pisa, where she was diagnosed with a brain tumor that had been growing really quickly, was continuing to grow. And she had been having trouble finding words, which, I'm perimenopausal, she's menopausal. It's like brain fog is a really common symptom. And anyway, ended up in a hospital in Pisa, and they said, we got it. You have to have emergency brain surgery to remove the tumor. Don't know if it's malignant, could be. It's a high risk surgery. She says, I need to be at UCSF for that. And they said, well, then you either fly tomorrow or you don't fly at all. So she did make it back to San Francisco, went straight from the airport to UCSF, emergency surgery. She was in the ICU. She did make it through the surgery. And evidently she's doing well enough in the ICU. I'm getting updates daily. Here's my point. When she originally reported these symptoms to her doctor, like more than once, her doctor, and I think thinking they were being supportive, was like, oh, menopause, this is a very common symptom. So just want to reassure and support you, and let you know that you don't have to worry. And this is like brain fog. And so it's like they felt like they were leaning into this support of someone who was menopausal. And then the inquiry just stopped, right? Just like LaToya, you were saying, if you had stopped there, you wouldn't be in March of 2022, I think you said, you wouldn't be here today. Well, my friend did stop there, and she didn't have someone else with her to be like, maybe we could dig a little deeper, right? So I think when it comes to health, it is really difficult from a negotiation standpoint at a practical level. I'm not using that word metaphorically here. Is really get help. And that's another everyday negotiation tip. Realize when you need help and get it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that we talk about a lot here, that for women, it's a hard thing to ask for help. And that's also why we have these sessions, to come forward and have discussions. And we open the floor up to ask for help, and to, break that stigma that it's shameful, or that it's weak, or whatever emotion can be associated to that it's actually part of life, that we are here to support one another. So yes. Elizabeth?
I'll ask a question, or I'll share a story and ask a question. Well, first of all, I want to say I love, LaToya, your comment. I love this whole conversation. So there's this, but LaToya's comment about going into these doctor's appointments question ready. So I want to share, and to Lucia's comment around try and have an advocate with you. I had two scenarios, one where I was the advocate and one where I needed an advocate and have my computer. And so the one where I was the advocate, rest in peace, my sister-in-law had ovarian cancer. And my younger brother, they were going in for surgery, and we were watching the progress of these cysts, and she ended up having emergency surgery. And I said to my younger brother, being in the health and wellness space, I'm like, you know what, let me come down. I'll be there for you for when the doctor comes out of surgery, and I can take notes. And at first he's like, no, I've got this. He's really cavalier about it. I'm like, Mike, he's scared to death. I'm like, Mike, I'm telling you, let me hop on the train. I'm on my way. And so he finally agreed. His wife went in, Deb went in for the surgery. We went for breakfast. We got back, we waited in the waiting room, and I had my computer with me, and I took notes because he didn't even know how to begin to ask questions, so that when his wife, Deb, woke up, she would have a laundry list of everything the doctor said, because there's no way, Mike, he was so emotional, wondering, what was happening. So I was able to, in that moment, give him. So if you're in a position where you can bring someone along and they're just taking notes, they're your scribe. Likely you won't be able to have that every appointment. So really, really, really hard from that perspective. If you can make it happen, great. In my situation, I got a random call I was going through, and I think I shared this recently with Lucia. I was going through perimenopause, didn't know my sister-in-law was dying. I had a high stress job, 60, 70-hour week job, high pressure, 3 kids was raising, had to get to their activities, all kinds of stuff. And what happened was, I went in for my routine gynecologic exam, and I was left, everything looked good. I got a call from my doctor probably about 6 weeks later. Hey, we got your blood back, and it looks like you have hyperthyroidism. I'm like, what's that? And she shared a little bit about that. I said, how much time? I had enough information, not about thyroidism, but about questions to ask her in the moment. And I'm like, how much time do I have before I need to see a specialist where the disease progresses, the condition? So she said, well, you have about 6 months. So she connects me to her specialist, and I go in, I meet this guy, and he, from the get-go, I felt like a number. I'm like, this is not going to work for me, but I wanted to get all the tests. It's really important that you get all of the tests to evaluate. And I was told that, I was in the middle stage of Graves' disease, which is not, it is hyperthyroidism. Hypo is Hashimoto's disease. And in any case, and he said, you need to take radioactive iodine and get your thyroid blown out. And, you have any sort of thyroid disease, there's many ways you can go with it, but to treat that would have put me in hypo Hashimoto's disease, and I would have gained 30 pounds, as well as been on medication for the rest of my life. And so I think that he was very interested, I don't know, in getting me to do that. Plus I wouldn't have been able to be with my family for 7 days. So, I call up my dad. He's a doctor. He's like, you got to find someone. You're going to be with an endocrinologist probably for the rest of your life. You got to find a doctor who works with. I felt good. Called my internist. He said, I was like, can I treat this holistically? Can I diet, exercise? He says, you're probably going to need meds. And he introduced me to another physician. Anyway, I'm almost finished the story. I go in, I meet Dr. Grover, amazing woman. She made me feel so safe, so seen. And she said, you know what? You're not middle stage with your Graves' disease. You're early stage. And we have 3 things, we 33% chance we can get you into remission. She showed the 3 different scenarios. Let's try this and try and get you into remission. So I was on medicine for 18 months. I gave up gluten. I did things to help, take any inflammation down, and it worked. But I think, and the reason why I share this story is twofold. One was I forgot to mention that when I was with the first doctor, I brought my computer. I shared that. I took notes. So what happened was I didn't have an advocate, but I was able to take notes. So if you can't have an advocate in the room with you, go in prepared to take notes. Try and take pauses and take notes so that you know how to ask the next set of questions. That was the reason why I shared that. But I think the point in that is really learning that having those second opinions, going on that journey, figuring out what works for you, and and doing that, and being question ready and being your own best cheerleader and advocate is essential.
I
If I
think
can
also
ask,
I'm hearing a common theme here too of, getting another opinion is so important, to not just stick with the one person that you're speaking with, especially when it comes to our health and in the medical field. Sorry, Keisha, what did you want to say?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add, when you are battling a critical illness, it is imperative that you have a medical team that understands you and you understand them, right? They could be the best of the best, but that relationship is necessary, right? I'm not I'm all about science. You don't have to over baby me. That's not who I am. But some patients need that. They need a little bit of softer touch, great bedside manner. You have to find a team that works well with your personality, especially when it's something that's ongoing it's gonna be I have to go to the doctor for the rest of my life, right? So I think that's really, really important. And everything that Elizabeth and LaToya said about being your own advocate, understanding your disease, understanding the medication you're on, other options, because I find that some physicians are very focused on one type of treatment and they don't really explain the other types of treatment that are available to you. It's just like do a little bit of research. I mean, but try to not become what I call a web doctor, like on WebMD, because you would overwhelm yourself. But definitely you have to feel comfortable with your medical team.
Mhm.
It is. It is.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Barbara, thank you for joining us. I see your hand up. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, you're
Hi. Okay. Yeah. I've unmuted myself. Thank you for calling me. I'm driving, but it's very interesting. All that has gone forth in terms of advocating for yourself, and that is what I tell my patients, that you know whatever the condition is, read about it. In fact, that's why I wrote my book for women. Because I find people come and they don't have a clue about their illness. They don't even remember the medicines they are on, the names of the medicines, and so many other things, because they think the doctor is like a god or who will take care of everything. But we must remember, some of them, they are too busy. They have only 10 minutes with patients and so on and so forth. And so it's important that you do your homework first. And then when you go, you have your computer or your list. When I go to see my primary care, I have a list that I take with me because I'm older and sometimes I may forget stuff, but I write them down and we go through, and so there are very simple things that people can do. Your medicines, for example, take a photographs of your bottles and it has the doses on it. So it's on your phone, so when they ask you what medicines you're on, you pull up your phone, it's there. Very kind of simple things that one can do in order to know about your disease, have some information. And I love it when people come to see me and they have knowledge of what is wrong with them, because then we can have a meaningful conversation. And I really love it. And I advocate that for my patients. So that's just what I wanted to chip in with, that we all need to make sure that we've done our research before we go in to see a doctor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Barbara. And that circles right back to what Lucia is saying. Women do really well in negotiations and in the room when we plan, when we do that, take that time to research. That is one of our core strengths as women. So we can utilize that, right, in all of these different situations. And that can be really important when you're in the doctor's office, when they're trying to put you on a different medication that you don't know about. Know for yourself what you are taking, what your condition is, and as much information as you can have is part of what's in your toolbox, right? In negotiating. Gonna just jump to the chat really quick. Oh, okay. We're good. Any other questions or shares, or this is also the time that we can open up the floor for if anybody has a project or a collaboration or an ask of some sort, would like some advice. This is our time that we can also open up our Zoom room for asking for help. And if you may not have something, we always encourage people to really listen, another big negotiating skill, right? Because you might be an advocate for somebody else in your life. And so when people share or come with an ask, we ask for you to really listen, because you might be a resource, or you might have a resource for that person in the room.
So Amy,
Yeah.
I will, since this is now that portion of the
Yeah.
meeting, Elizabeth knows I'm a stickler for like staying on topic. Do you remember when I said that getting that practice with a negotiation or that training is not like, don't spend $3,000 on it. You just don't have to. But practice making something a habit. That's the part. You can go to one of those master classes and feel like it's like when you take up a new sport, and like you take up golf and you go out and buy the clubs and you buy the cute skirts and you buy the shoes. You're like, oh, golfer, like, no, you're not until you can actually like hit the ball and actually play the course. Well, it's the same with negotiation. You go to a $3,000 masterclass, doesn't make you a negotiator. You're going to get some good pointers there. Then it's up to you to practice. And that's where people fall down. And then all of that knowledge becomes stale and you haven't put into effect. So it's got to be simple, though. It's got to be like with dog training, 8 minutes a day, 8 minutes a day. It doesn't even have to be 8, could be 6 minutes a day. 6-minute abs will actually get you the washboard abs, right? So I actually do want to tell people that I just released an app. It's free. And what it is, it's just a daily, everyday super tips. I'll show it to you. It's called, wait, let me show you what it looks like. And every day you get one tip. It's just like, you can kind of see it there. It's like your daily horoscope or a fortune cookie, or grabbing a daily affirmation out of the bowl, and you tap on it, and then it's like a deck of cards, but it's digital, and you tap the card and you get your daily super tip. And then if you swipe it to the right, it'll say, oh, you just get one every 24 hours. And that way it's sticky because you'll practice it. But then you can scroll backwards and see the other super tips you've gotten. You can favorite some. It's free. I also have a pre-planning worksheet. So these are just some little tools that can just start to make it a habit. So then when you start to look around the world and you're suddenly seeing all kinds of negotiation opportunities, and then internalizing your own voice as a confident and competent everyday negotiator.
I love that. I had no idea you had an app. I'm so glad we got
I sent out an announcement, but I think that what do you call
you might
it?
have, yeah.
Emails. I think a lot of it goes into spam. So
yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going to download it. It looks like Elizabeth just did, or already has it.
Awesome.
So let's put that into the chat.
It's super. I'll put it in.
Super
it.
Yeah, there's a barcode. I don't know how to. I don't know.
Type in. Hold on a minute. I just want to make sure I get into the group. You have to look for the book. Yeah, it's so.
Sharon says, great panel and discussion. So important to have an advocate in the doctor's office with you when you're dealing with serious health issue. It can be a lot to take on with the diagnosis or making decisions on next steps. Having someone for support to ask questions or get information you might miss is important. Fantastic advice on negotiating for your life and health from all panelists. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for being here. Sharon's in Australia, so it's early, actually, quite early for you.
All right, let's all give a.
Wonderful. Okay. Anybody else have anything they would like to add into the mix today? I just want to give a shout out to Jennifer here. She was part of our program in Ghana and is part of our mentor program. So we have a not-for-profit arm called Sister Good, and we work with women and young girls in underserved communities in developing regions, developing nations, and we provide wellness programming and education for things like advocating for yourself, self-discovery, self-care, your self-expression, and how do we continue to build sisterhood and communities around the world. And so it's wonderful to have you here, Jennifer. It's quite late for you. So thank you for taking time to be here as well.
And where's Gina? Gina, what part of the world are you in right now? Are you back in the Netherlands?
Yes, I'm back in the Netherlands by now, so it's also quite late for me. So
Yeah.
I'm already in like a quiet spot in my house, close to my bedroom, ready to jump in bed after this call.
Oh,
Thank you for
I
making
wanted
the
to do a shout out to Lucia because I really relate to your tips because I really did some research myself when I started my first job. And I was already puzzled why women made so much less money than men. So I did some research and I found some tips online and I did really some research about salary and also, as you said, more than salary,
More
the
than
whole
salary.
benefit. Exactly. And not being afraid to put my foot down, asked male friends who had been negotiating a job recently about their frame of reference for the salary I should ask for.
Mhm.
And I simply put down a number that was so much higher than I would have dared to put down myself. And the
Yeah.
guy I was negotiating my salary with, his face got all kinds of shades. He
Yeah.
almost choked when I said that number.
Yeah.
And then I said to him, or don't you think I'm worth it? And that was it. He simply gave me the salary I asked for.
Yeah, I mean, I call it asking for a pony when you want a kitten. Leave yourself room to negotiate. And they're finding
Exactly.
out what the right pay scale is for that job and your level of experience that you're offering. There's finding out
Exactly.
that information. And then there's the how do you do it? How do you ask for it? So one of the first things I tell people who do ask me for help with this is they say, well, when you get the offer, well, first of all, the negotiation doesn't start at the offer. It starts at the interview stage. Okay. And remember that you're also interviewing them. It's not, let's say you're
Exactly.
desperate for the job. They don't know
Exactly.
that. They don't know that you're desperate for the job. You're also interviewing them. Let's say you do get the offer, right? The first thing you do is negotiators have manners. You say thank you. You say thank you for the offer. And then you follow it up with a question. How did you come up with that? How did you calculate that? However you want to say it. You want to know the factors that they consider to build that offer. Then you ask another question. When do you need an answer? And then you use that time for your counter offer. And then be prepared to justify it when they ask you, how did you calculate that? How did you come up with that question is very overlooked in many negotiation scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
No,
good
but
for
I
you.
also,
Good for you,
yeah, but
because at the current
I
rate,
went to
it's
law
going to,
school,
sorry?
so I'm also used to, do my homework, I would
Yes.
say. And
Yep.
in another job where salary was not that flexible, I pushed for the car I really like to have. And
Yeah.
I said,
Flexible schedule, meal kit boxes, gym membership,
yeah, or
equity. I could do this all day with the things you can
exactly, or
negotiate,
not negotiate. Sometimes simply putting down the things I wanted to do because I was a mother, and I
Right.
said I am working part-time. I did not ask for permission to work part-time, and I was working in a really conservative, male-dominated space in
Right.
construction, the oldest
Right.
construction company in the
Yeah.
Netherlands, with very few females.
I bet.
And I didn't ask to work part-time. Said I'm working part-time,
This is
and
one of my
I'm not
conditions. Yeah, this is
exactly,
non-negotiable.
and
That's one of my
I'm
conditions.
not engaging in 8 o'clock meetings because,
Right.
or well, I could, but then some of you should come to my home and then comb my daughter's hair, fill her little backpack, and then drive her to school. And if you do so, then I will be in the office and engage in the 8 o'clock meetings.
Right.
So,
That's right.
and if you do the 8 o'clock meetings, you take decisions that influence my job, then we have another problem. So I'm also not about negotiation when there's no room to negotiate from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's also taking the space that you need, I would say.
Remember that when they've given you the offer, that is your best time to negotiate because they want you. That is when you have the most leverage. They want you, they may even need you. So that's the time to do it. So really strategic. I'm really happy to hear that. Individual negotiation will make somewhat of a difference. At the current pay gap, it's actually going to take 254 years to close it. So it's partly individual effort and getting more women comfortable with it. And it's also partly policies.
Is a fibroid aware. I want to add to that, the negotiating part when it comes to salary. So I just recently started another job 6 months ago. It's a really big job. And to my benefit, one of my former a manager for my previous employer, she's the one who referred me in. And so she was able to kind of help coach me into what to expect as far as salary, benefits, etc. Everyone doesn't have that benefit. When we get to the negotiating table, the official after the interview, Lucia, we get to the actual negotiating table. What they initially offered me was almost laughable. And I had to remind myself of my worth. But I will tell you, the company that I work for is an amazing company. They're global. Working in this industry, to have them on my resume speaks volumes and can really open a door for just about anything else that I want to do in the industry. But that wasn't what was important to me. I have a family to take care of. I have, other things I want to do. And so I was not afraid to turn it down. I was not afraid to say, is that the best you can do? And let me explain the reason why I'm asking that question. And after we talked about it, they came back with an offer that was way more than I was initially seeking. But I said that to say that, number one, had I not had that individual in my corner, I probably would have just taken the opportunity because of who the company is and because of their reputation without really going to bat for my own self. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because it goes in so many aspects of our lives to negotiate, not just financially, not just professionally, but so many other aspects. And I could not be more grateful to be having this conversation with you all.
Thank you.
I feel exactly the same. And listening to LaToya's and Keisha's stories about their medical conditions, when, just February in my OBGYN, it was like, well, it's time for you to go on HRT with what's it called? The estradiol. And she's like, it was just like a very matter of fact, you need to get started on this. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's the thing to do. That's just normal. That's, standard operating procedure. I'm like, okay. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't ask well, are there any, why, is there a particular reason? What are the side effects? What might I just was like, okay, I guess it was all right. And I start taking it and I'm like, then I'm having all these, I'm gaining weight and I'm not sleeping when things were going on. And I'm like, is this it's like, if I had understood the side effects that could happen, I might have said, hold off and see how bad, see if I do get hot flashes. I don't, right? It wasn't having that. Let's me, I'd prefer to manage the natural menopause symptoms than I would to manage the side effects of so even in a medical situation, I was just kind of okay, I guess, and now I'm starting to titrate myself off of it because I kind of want to see well, let's see, maybe I'm not going to stay on this stuff.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you, everyone, for joining once again this month. We'll be back next month for our 3rd year anniversary.
2 year.
But it's 3 years. This will be 3 years we've been in operation.
No, I think it's 2 years. We launched in 2022, August 26th. We're going on our 3rd year. Yeah. Sorry.
Going on our 3rd year.
Yeah.
Okay. Going on our 3rd year. I got ahead of myself.
That's okay. One thing,
so many things. It feels like 3 years because so much has been achieved in those 2 years.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. And we'll be celebrating 3 Sisters of the Year. So one in women's health, one in sustainability, and one for women's rights. And we've been having all these posts out to nominate women you think are deserving in those categories. So anyway, well, thank you so much, everybody. What a wonderful panel. And thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences.
Thank
You're
you so
welcome. Thank you
Absolutely.
for
I'm
having
having
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much.
Had an amazing conversation. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.